Hi, everyone in NC Poll and CGA land. This is Dawn Vaughan, your intrepid politics reporter at the News and Observer. You'll be hearing from me more often on our Under the Dome episodes, as I'll be taking on the lead hosting role in the podcast, so I'll talk to you soon.
Get in the game with the college-branded Venmo debit card. Wrap your team with every tap and earn up to 5% cash back with Venmo Stash, a new rewards program from Venmo. No monthly fee, no minimum balance, just school pride and spending power. Get in the game and sign up for the Venmo debit card at venmo.com/collegecard. The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. Select schools available. Venmo Stash terms and exclusions apply at venmo.me/stash terms. Max $100 cash back per month.
This is Under the Dome. On today's episode, we're taking a look at what's happening in North Carolina politics for the week of September 12, 2022.
For the News and Observer and the NC Insider, I'm Dawn Vaughan, your host for Under the Dome on Monday, September 12th, 2022. I'm here with my colleague Danielle Battaglia, our DC correspondent, and we have just under 2 months until Election Day, and candidates at all levels are obviously trying to get the most votes out of everybody and motivate voters and those in their party, those maybe who haven't decided yet. So not just the base. So what we're seeing now is state and federal candidates shift their stances, or maybe how they explain their stances a little bit towards the middle, and some aren't talking much at all, or if they are, it's about each other. Danielle, do you want to get started talking about the federal level? What's changing, who's talking, who's not talking, what they hope to gain? Let's start off with some of the congressional races like Wiley-Nickel, Bo Hines. Danielle, tell me what you're seeing lately as we count down to Election Day.
Sure. So, let me start with this. So I had spoken last week with Chris Cooper. He's a political scientist at Western Carolina University, which I'm pretty sure is one of my alma mater's rivals. So I've never told him that, but, just throwing it out there. Anyways, so he had said to me that this is something that you tend to see in the general election. It's normal. The candidates, basically, they start in the primary where they're going to be heavily, I'm Republican or I'm Democrat. They really want their base to know, this is what I stand for. This is why you need to vote for me. It's a very different base for the electorate. So in that primary, Republicans are voting for Republicans, Democrats are voting for Democrats. You want to show more of a extreme side to that. But when you come into the general election, you do need to start playing more of a middle ground because you have a different electorate. Now you're having Democrats and Republicans choose between you and your opponent. So seeing some of this middle of the road movement that we're now seeing in different races across the state is kind of typical of candidates going into the general election. So it's not really diverging from what we've seen in the past. So with the Wiley-Nickel Bo Hines race, this is District 13. It's our true swing district. So it's one to watch. State Senator Wiley-Nickel came out with a commercial, I believe 2 weeks ago at this point, where he's got children in AOC shirts and MAGA shirts saying basically that he is they're in a bounce house and they're trying to keep the bounce house afloat, but they're divided. So Wiley's come in and said, I am I'm the guy to keep this bounce house moving because I'm going to work with everyone and make it fun. So you see him trying to show that I can work with both sides. I'm the middle of the road candidate. Bo Hines, more interesting. And we're seeing this across the country. He had a very hard stance, at least when he spoke with the News and Observer in May or April, basically saying I'm anti-abortion, no exceptions, nothing. This is sanctity of life. We need to respect God's creation. It was a hard no. I will never support abortion. And so depending on what interview you look at the time pre-primary, sometimes he did say, with the exception of the mother. That's not what he told our newspaper. And now he's coming out very strongly saying, if the life of the mother's at risk, I will have an exception there. However, I'm against abortion. He's also told another news outlet, I believe it was WRIL, that he will make exceptions for rape and incest. well, actually, I shouldn't say he will. He's studying whether he will make an exception for rape and incest as well. So we're kind of seeing him divulge. He also stripped a piece of his website that said that he was anti-abortion. That's no longer there. So we're seeing him have like a more drastic middle of the road. And I think a lot of that is because of the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, making this like a much bigger issue in the general election than they saw coming.
Why do you think they're doing that? Do you think it's part of it is what we're seeing? And I can talk about this on the legislative level once we talk more about Congress too, but are they seeing what's happening in other states? Do you think it's polling? Do you think this was what we campaigned on for a long time now? What does it actually come down to? And maybe that's why Hines is shifting a little bit, that particular issue. Are you seeing any other changes from him, or is it pretty much just that?
So the one I paid attention to is abortion. That's the one I can speak to more intelligently. But with that, I think that, like I said, Roe v. Wade coming out, it's become way more of an issue than it was before. And polling is showing that even in North Carolina, more people support abortion than, including Republicans, than what we've seen in the past. And so I think there's a shift to make sure they are in line with both what people want to see nationally, but both in North Carolina as well. The opinion has had a different take than typical following that ruling.
Well, let's go to the U.S. Senate race for North Carolina. What's going on with Cheri Beasley and Ted Budd? Are they talking a little less about themselves, more about each other, or certain issues? We've seen Beasley, I believe, talking to police lately. Both of them are talking about farmers a lot, it's looking like.
Well, Ted Budd, he will tell you all day long that he grew up on a farm. It's an issue that I get a lot of emails about because people think he's trying to present himself as a poor farm boy when he is not that poor of a family. So I think that's why the farming is coming up a lot right now. But they're both running such quiet campaigns. I mean, Beasley's out campaigning among the people, but like you don't see a lot of huge talk from her. And then Bud is completely quiet. I think it's part of the strategy of his campaign. I'm not exactly sure what that strategy is, but they're definitely staying quiet. I have seen in the last week, Bud has attacked Beasley on the basically saying that she's trying to play the middle of the road too, by saying that she supports police, but she's campaigning with Representative Cori Bush, who is a supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement and has also been a huge advocate for defunding the police. And so you're seeing some attacks on that end from him. With the Bud campaign, you're also seeing him sort of back away from, I shouldn't say back away from his Trump endorsement, but he is not pushing that as hard as we saw in the primary.
I was just thinking about farming. I think Wiley Nickel has mentioned farming in his family history too. So let's talk about the Trump factor. Do you think some of that is because of, finding out that he had all these, classified documents that he took home with him after the presidency? Do you think Republicans are like, well, let's, step back from talking about him too much right now, or let's see how the case turns out? What do you think?
The Trump factor is so interesting to me right now because in the primary, it was pre a lot of the January 6th committee hearings. I'm not even sure we had one at that point. And so there was a lot of talk about like, it's fine, no big deal if Trump's endorsing us, people love him. I mean, he's got a strong base in the Republican Party and his supporters, they love him. So to get that primary vote, it was really helpful to have Trump. And I think a lot of Republicans are not paying attention to the January 6th committee hearings. What was really fascinating to me looking at data on who's watching these hearings was a lot of the millennial Gen Zers are not listening. So anyways, on that point, now we've got the Mar-a-Lago raid, if you want to call it that, with the feds coming in and searching for those documents that he had. And I think there's been two sides of it. Some people, I think his followers have been very angry that they're calling this unprecedented and saying like, this doesn't happen. Basically saying Biden's controlling things, putting a lot of blame on the Democrats for things that they hadn't seen in the past. However, as more and more information has come out about what was at Mar-a-Lago and the specific documents, you've seen Republicans kind of back off of their, oh my God, how terrible. They're just talking about it less. And I think that's got to be hard to navigate for a candidate supported by Trump right now to have like not really know where this investigation is going and what's being found.
Especially when crime is involved and you don't want to align yourself. That's, going to be if we see any other perp walks in the future from anybody. So, all right, well, that's about what we have for we wanted to talk about at the federal level. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back talking about what's going on with the legislative races and some shifts or changes in how people are talking. And we'll also have Headliner of the Week. So we'll be right back.
Fox News is now streaming live on Fox One. When news breaks, we don't just report it. We go beyond the headlines to get the full story. Get live coverage, in-depth analysis, and perspectives from the voices you trust, all in one place. Whether you're at home or on the go, stay connected to the stories shaping our world. Stream Fox News on Fox One. Download today.
We're back. You're listening to Under the Dome. I'm News and Observer Politics reporter Dawn Vaughan, here with our Congressional reporter Danielle Battaglia.
So I have some questions for you because you have a lot more races to cover than I do with the general.
So many.
There's so many. So I want to know, what kind of shift are you seeing in the legislature? Are you seeing this middle of the road that we're seeing with my congressional candidates?
Abortion is really just changed this election so much, and I think we've both covered that how before this, it was like generally a midterm election, especially if people aren't happy with the party in the White House, especially if everything costs an arm and a leg, you're going to vote for the opposing party. So that's what the election looked like for a while. And then with the Supreme Court decision, Roe versus Wade and abortion laws in all the states, and states are the ones in charge of it now, that's changed everything. And is it enough to motivate base voters on either side? I think Republicans in North Carolina, when we first started asking them about this, said the party line, House Speaker Tim Moore and Senate Leader Phil Berger said, they've been long time, anti-abortion, described as pro-life, and that there will be legislation next year if assuming they had the supermajority and that Cooper couldn't veto it. Well, seeing what's happening in other states is kind of changing things a little bit because people have seen how that's played out with states that had, trigger laws where it was like total bans or no exceptions for rape and incest. And what do people actually think about that of, forcing people to carry child to term in those circumstances, or if the baby is not going to live. So there's a lot of different things we've seen play out. And I think Republican lawmakers running for reelection or candidates are looking at that. And that's why we didn't get very many specifics from Moore and Berger earlier on, except, these general comments. Speaker Moore, what he's come out with his personal position is more conservative than Senator Berger, which maybe was a surprise, maybe wasn't. It's, you've got to see what people actually think. And so Moore is still generally saying, and we're not hearing anything from other House Republican candidates wanting, very early restrictions. Where Berger, the last time we all talked to him, he is looking at the end of the first trimester, exceptions for rape and incest, and life of the mother. There's another factor of not just it's a life or death situation, but how much harm is this potentially going to cause to a mother who is who has to give birth, but it might cause permanent physical damage or something like that. So they're saying talk to that we're not going to what happens in caucus stays in caucus, but talk to your constituents. Have these kind of conversations. So after Berger said that, and I reported it, everyone else in the press corps reported it. We've seen another senator come out with almost an identical line, Senator Michael Lee, who's running for reelection down in New Hanover County. And it's basically the same thing, those certain exceptions and first trimester limit. So Democrats are, again, people have campaigned on these issues in a very specific way. It's to the Republicans' advantage. They would say, oh, Democrats want abortion on demand. And then Democrats would say Republicans want nothing ever, no exceptions. And, the reality, of course, and everything is like somewhere in the middle there. So there is a little bit of a shift that we're seeing among Republican senators, at least, or that they, don't want to talk about it the same way you were saying with some congressional races, that they're worried about those, votes on the margins. You have the base that you want, but then you also need to worry about all the largest voting group in the state, which is unaffiliated voters. And is this going to be an issue for them, or a party loyalist, where this is a deciding issue, not the way that they want? So that's what we're seeing at the legislative level. And there's more focus on it this year because of those 170 races and how power will turn out.
So many races.
Yeah. So that's where things stand. So let's get to our headliners of the week. Danielle, why don't you go first?
Okay, I'm going to start with what everyone's talking about, which is the death of Queen Elizabeth. I don't know that we should say it took us by surprise yesterday, because I think here in America, we woke up at like 8 a.m. to news that she was not doing well and her family was rushing to be by her side. It was interesting, though, to be at the U.S. Capitol when it happened, because we immediately saw the reaction from America. And, Schumer and McConnell took the floor to talk about her death and to honor her legacy. We lowered the flags to half-mast. If you look at actually congress.gov, they changed the entire front page to her face. So there was a lot of just memories of her, talking about her. The press room was really fascinating to be in, because we were all trying to figure out how the transition from queen to king works and titles and all of that. So we spent our entire day focused on the queen yesterday.
Right. So she's obviously, that's headliner of the week month, for everybody. I know my mom is originally from England and was named after Queen Elizabeth. So there are a lot of people. She's such a part of the culture there. Yeah. She goes by Betty, but she's named after Queen Elizabeth. So my grandparents met in World War II. So anyway, my headliner is a little more lighthearted. It's about, my headliner last week was also about sports and the governor, and this one's about sports and the governor, but he keeps having sports politics crossover episodes. So, well, that is a good lead in to part of my headliner, is the outfit that he wore for this announcement with NASCAR. NASCAR is not a very, everyone's all, not colorful and logos of that sort of thing. So there's a little more flair with NASCAR related attire. So the whole point of that is my headliner of the week is Dale Earnhardt Jr., also just known as Dale Jr. or just Jr. So Jr. was at the legislature last year, and then this past week was in front of the legislative building anyway for an announcement in front of the History Museum with the governor and NASCAR officials, because our Charlotte Observer colleague, Alex Zetlow, covered the big announcement that the North Wilkesboro Speedway is going to host the NASCAR All-Star Race next year in May, bringing the sport back to a forgotten racetrack, as Alex wrote. And Cooper, who usually wears a suit, was wearing this racing jacket and embroidered shirt that he had gotten at some previous race-related event. So the governor obviously is really big into some sports, including racing, as is a large group of people in the state. So you said you grew up around racing, Danielle, right?
Yeah, well, my parents are both huge NASCAR fans. So the first race I watched, actually very sadly, was the death of Dale Earnhardt, which my dad was swearing up and down, this is not a dangerous sport, it will be fine. And then that happened. But that kind of endeared me to NASCAR anyways. And Dale Jr. was always one of my favorite racers. I'm kind of bummed he's out of the sport. So I shouldn't say he's out of the sport. He's not racing anymore. He's very much still a part of the sport. But actually it was funny when I moved to North Carolina to cover Rockingham County. There's Rockingham Speedway, which is not in Rockingham County, but people got us confused all the time, the city and the county. So, heard a lot about that racetrack, heard about Wilkesboro a lot. So I know this is like a huge deal for that area to have to come back and be revitalized. And I'm very jealous that he got to see Dale Jr. yesterday.
I remember being in the house last year, and then I was like, wait, Junior is here? And someone goes, what do you mean by Junior? And I'm like, there's only one Junior. If you're, it's Dale Earnhardt Jr. And not everybody just knows that, whether you're a racing fan or not. I've only been to one race. When I was working in Virginia. It was the New River Valley Speedway in Pulaski County. And I sat next to him, the newsroom sports reporter, and he convinced everyone to go to a race. And I was like, I don't think I'm really into racing, but it was fun. It was really, it's fun. There's a reason why everybody loves it. I'm sure any racing fan listeners, can tell us all the many reasons why they're a big fan. So my headliner is both Cooper's racing attire, but that Junior was here again. And that's big racing news for the state and people and business and everything else. So anyway,
I think both our headliners is go get your fall drinks, food, everything.
Right. Pumpkin, everything. I'm segueing from the apples to pumpkins. So. All right. For the News and Observer and the Insider, I'm Dawn Vaughan with Danielle Battaglia. We'll talk to you next time.
For more from our politics team, subscribe to the News and Observer at newsobserver.com/subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at Under the Dome and NC Insider, and sign up for our weekly political newsletter, also called Under the Dome, at newsobserver.com/newsletters. Thanks for listening.